Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Podcasters Unleashed. I'm your host, Carla, today, and today we are having a very special episode, which is very different than our debates and heated discussion. Today, we are going to share a journey about one of our hosts, so you guys can get to know us more in a personal level, and maybe you can be interested in one of our hosting services or our partnership in podcasting or business, or just get to know us more and be inspired with our different stories. So today we are going to share Carla's journey. She's going to open up and share her story from her early challenging childhood and how she became a successful educator. So, just a quick introduction about Carla. She's an intellectual professional educator. She's committed to the education field and she's coaching teachers and offering multiple services and coaching sessions. But before going deeply through her special story, I wanted to introduce my co host first. So, let's go with Nelson.
And good morning or good evening, everyone. This is Nelson J. Zambrano here, Investing in America, where we talk about on my podcast how to invest in U.S. real estate. And also, I leave a certain amount of episodes where I interview people that have nothing to do with real estate, but they got incredible stories. So you can find me on Spotify and iTunes. And in about 30 some odd days, YouTube channel is going live. And September-ish, the book is coming out. So that's it. I pass it over to Matilda, Dancing Matilda.
Hello, everyone. This is Matilda. I'm the host of Coffee with Matilda, Journey to Self. And my podcast is about finding yourself, loving yourself, and coming out of adversity in a more powerful way possible. Over to you, Simon.
Hi, I'm Simon Rushton. Yes, I'm the host of Taxis Chronicles. When people jump in my Uber or taxi for international people, they just tell their story. They give their account of what they do, what they're interested in. I've got over 500 episodes, very interesting, short and sweet, 5 to 20 minutes. Feel free to jump on the podcast anytime. We're post at 8 a.m. Daily British Standard Time. Over to you, Nelson, Victor.
Yes. Thank you, Simon. I'm Victor Osio. I'm the host of Diaspora Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we have strategic conversation with entrepreneurs from the African and Caribbean community, and they tell us how, or they give us the gist of how they move from the 9 to 5 towards a lifestyle of freedom. Back to you. Over to you, Carla.
Thank you, Victor. And also, I'm the host of the podcast, Women in Stories podcast. So, if you'd like to know also the story of Carla, we had a really good discussion in my podcast at her journey. But today, we are really going to talk deep about her challenges, how she started her journey as an educator, a successful educator, and a successful coach, and also a successful single mother, which is very, very hard these days. So, Matilda, you had a specific question to ask Carla for the childhood challenges.
Well, for me, it's very fascinating to learn about her, especially in her teenager time. You had maybe the courage that maybe lots of teenagers don't even have. You left your house and you had to find yourself. You had to navigate yourself through it. I know that at one point you had to, I think you were 16. So can you tell me about that? Because lots of people don't have the courage, even in their 30s or 40s, to come out of their family to be independent.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that I left my house, Matilda. I would say I was kicked out the house. That's more accurate, actually. If I'd had a choice, I probably wouldn't have left the house at such a young age. But I was a disappointment to my father when I was 16. because he was quite a strict and very principled man. And he didn't like my teenage choices. He had different ideas for me. He wanted me to go to university and be a lawyer, but I had no intention of going to university or being a lawyer. So, yeah, and I got involved with guys and things like that, which my dad was not happy about. That was his worst nightmare. But I was pretty naive. My dad was very strict, but he wasn't a great educator. And there's a difference. There's a difference between being strict and being an educator. So I got involved with an older man when I was 16, and my dad was really disappointed, really angry, in fact. And within a few months, he'd kicked me out the house. And then I ended up in a relationship with that person. And very soon after that, I ended up pregnant, which also added more coals on top of my head in my dad's eyes. And he literally disowned me. He didn't want anything to do with me for months, until my daughter was 2 years old. My dad didn't meet his first grandchild until she was 2 years old. So I was very much out the house. And my dad's philosophy was, if you think you're grown and you don't have to listen, well, there you go out there and do it then. So yeah, that was my experience.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I mean that I'm sure that would be very tough on a teenager. And if it was an Armenian culture or Iranian culture, maybe you would be not alive. No, I'm joking, but like, I'm not very joking.
Yeah, I get your point, Matilda. We would like to know more also about the background and how you have grown up, like which kind of family you had.
My dad was a lone parent. My dad had no family. He moved from Jamaica to the UK, and he worked in the UK, in England, and in Scotland. And he had 3 children while he was in the UK, and no family or anything. And he raised the 3 of his by himself, which was quite challenging for him. Being a man, we always talk about single parents and lone parents and things like that being women, but my dad was a single parent in a time where it wasn't cool. It's cool now. You see dads now with their babies in the carrier, and dads are looking after the kids and stuff like that, but it wasn't trendy when my dad was doing it. And he was old as well. My dad, I calculated it the other day, I think my dad was in his late 40s when I was born. So he was quite an old man, and he had quite different value system from the UK value system. We were British, grown up in Britain with an open mind, should you say. But my dad was very traditional, very strict, and very old-fashioned values type of character. So I think that gave him some challenges as well.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, I think also Matilda has a question about your relationship with your mother. Yes, Matilda?
Carla, you're putting me in a very bad. I hope you don't mind, Carla, but if you mind, please tell me. I don't need to ask this question. But I remember one day you taught me about your mother. And for me, it was always a question. How is your relationship with your mother? You seem like a very lovely and amazing mother. How do you define your relationship with her? Would you ever do you meet her? Do you have a good relationship with her? Do you miss her?
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. Let me go backwards. Do I miss her? Absolutely, yes. Did I have a good relationship with her? It was okay. It was short. It was a really short relationship. I didn't meet my mother formally until I was in my 20s, and I already had 2 children by then. I knew the only memory I have of her from a child was when I was about 3. I reckon I was about 3 years old, and I remember seeing the back of her and what she was wearing. And all through my childhood, I always remember that she was a blonde-haired lady. She had straight hair to there, and she was wearing a grey suit, a grey jacket and grey skirt. But that was the only memory of my mother that I had when I was a child, because she was absent from my life all through my childhood. She was an alcoholic, and I never find it a secret. I don't see these things as a secret. I think that when we don't talk about stuff to do with our background, it's more of a challenge than actually talking about it and exploring it, because it does shape us. So I don't mind the questions, answer to your first point. But yeah, I didn't know her at all throughout my childhood. And I just had these minimal memories. And what I knew of her was what my dad told me, and the fact that she was an alcoholic. And that's why I didn't live with her. I lived with my dad. But also, I didn't have any contact with her throughout my childhood. It was just my dad.
Carla, Nelson, I'm going to jump in for a question. So, I mean, that's quite a background that you have, and it's commendable. But with that background, what made you decide to become an educator? What made that jump?
Well, I think it was my background. When I was young, I was very nurturing, because I told you there were three of us. There was me, there was my sister, and there was my brother. And they were.
And hold on a second. Are you the oldest or the youngest?
I'm the eldest, yes. So there's me, and then my sister is 18 months younger than me, and then my brother's 5 years younger than me. So I was the eldest. So my dad was also, as I said, he was very traditional. So in traditional families, the older child, particularly if it's a girl, is responsible for the younger children. So I was given responsibility. I was also quite sensible. People would label me as quite sensible. I had my little personality traits that probably weren't sensible, which probably got me pregnant when I was 16. But I was very sensible. And my dad used to teach me a lot of things, and then he would get me to supervise my siblings. But also, people often said when I was young, like when I would go to church and stuff like that, people would say, she's going to be a mom or a teacher when she grows up, because I was always around all the kids. So when we'd go to Sunday school, I would get all the little kids around me. And I think I had maybe an instinct that I was going to be a teacher, because I would sit kids on my knee and stuff like that. And I was a tiny little thing, but I would sit smaller kids on my knee and I would pet them and nurture them and try and get them to be quiet in church and stuff like that. I was a bit bossy as well. So I always had that sort of motherly behavior just in me. And I think when I got older and I became a mom, I suddenly realized how much I needed a mom, and she wasn't there, because when you're a young mother, you look to your own mother, I guess, for an example of how to raise your children. But I didn't have that. And that led me to go into education. I went to teach in schools because I started by doing a course called Parent Helpers in Schools, which was a free community education course. And I did it because I wanted to know how to teach my kids. I was worried because people were saying things like, there was a lot of statistics. It was the era of statistics, and people would say things like, teen moms and their kids have more accidents, and their kids are badly behaved, and their kids have got poor outcomes and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to know how to counter that. And I didn't have any influence around me to know how to be a mother. The closest I had was my godmother, who was always really nurturing and really loving.
So you wanted to put the odds in your favor, huh?
Yeah, so I just went to learn about kids, really. I wanted to know about kids and how to look after kids properly.
And Carl, by the way, your godmother, is she on the mom's side or dad's side?
The what, sorry?
Your godmother, is she on the mom's side or dad's side?
My godmother, my dad chose godparents from me from the church. If anyone's Christian background, they know how that your parents just kind of choose godparents. When you get christened or blessed in the church, your parents choose members of the church congregation to be your godparents. And my dad chose a godmother and a godfather from the church community for me. And my godmother, she was she took me under her wing. She was a really loving person, really looked after me a lot.
So she lived up to the godmother name.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Carla, we have a couple of comments. I want to read them before becoming a lot. So Beatrice, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Henkel is saying, how did your father's parenting influence your parenting style, Carla?
Oh, that's a good question. Hi, Beatrix. Yeah, that had a massive influence on me. As I said before, my dad was very traditional. He was very strict, and he was very much of the kind of man that he was do as I say, not as I do type of person. So my dad was a single parent who had lots of relationships, but he didn't want me to do that or my siblings to do it. And he'd be like super strict about things that he himself was doing or had done. So I tried not to do that with my children. I tried to be much more authentic with my kids. and to have more of a relationship with them and more loving rather than dictatorial or a disciplinarian. And also I made a point not to hit my children. I think that was something that I felt was a negative from my dad's parenting style or from that parenting style of that generation. And I didn't want to do that with my kids. I'm more focused on having a healthy relationship with them and having communication and setting an example for them and having this continual dialogue with them about why they should do things and how they should do it rather than what they should do. And I'm quite open. I'm a bit more open than my dad was. One of my daughters always says that I'm a cool mom. But I wasn't when they were young. She says you were really strict when we were young, but now you're older. Now we're older, you're a bit more cool. So I try to have a bit more of a balance and more of a loving relationship so that they feel supported and feel like I'm on their side and not kind of just this disciplinarian, which is my dad's kind of style.
Also, very nice. Also, Angela Young, thank you for coming back, Angela Young. She's saying, Carla, I have a very similar background to you. Fully resonated. Very nice. We have, you can continue, and I'm going to find I'm going to put other comment.
Can you read the comment, Matilda?
Did you hear me? I said, Carla, I have a very similar background to you. Fully resonated.
Yes, there's another one from Angela too.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that. So if you continue, I'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just jump in there. Carla, you seem to have a very, very interesting background, and you know, some of these things. Sometimes, as we grow older, we seem to like when we look back. According to Steve Jobs, we can't connect the dots forward. What dots can you connect backwards on how you actually do things now from the perspective of being raised by a single dad?
I think there's a strong sort of, I'm very values driven. And that's one of the positive things that I loved about my dad. My dad was a very principled man, and he believed in the value of certain things, like, for example, manners and hard work and respect for yourself and things like that, which is why I guess he kicked me out of the house when I was 16, because he thought I was just a rebel and had no respect for myself. But following it back over the years, I can see that there are a lot of things about my character that I've developed over the years based on what he taught me. People always describe me as being polite and being respectful and being a hardworking person, as someone that they like having around. And I think that's from my dad, definitely, because he taught that a lot and he insisted on it. He had high standards for how you present yourself when you go outside, how you talk to people, even how you dress and stuff like that. So when I look back on it, those things served me really well. And I, whenever anyone says that, I always say, yeah, that's my dad, because that's how my dad was. Even today, I was packing my son's suitcase to travel and everything was folded and it was all clipped together and all square. And I was telling my son, when you go and you open your suitcase and it's like this, that's my dad. That would have been how my dad did things. He polished shoes and he wore a tie and he hung up clothes and starched everything. You could never go out without your clothes ironed, for example. That would have been a big shame. So things like that, my dad was really serious about, and I'm like that now. And I hear my dad sometimes when I'm talking to my kids, I sound like my dad. So yeah, that's definitely something I can trace back.
Carla, Angela Young, sorry, is saying my mom abandoned me and my dad when I was 3, and I only met after 3 years.
30 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
We feel you, Angela.
Yeah.
So Carla, moving on, Carla, when did you decide you wanted to be a podcaster and why?
That was when I was doing teaching. I always said when I started teaching, when I get to the point where I don't want to go to school anymore, I feel like it's not for me anymore. I'm not going to stay because I don't want to be that teacher that hates school but still keeps coming and teaching people's children. So I started to think about ways that I can branch out and still stay in education, help. I wanted to start helping parents and teachers because I could see that I no longer wanted to be in the classroom, but I did want to do something and use my experience to help parents and teachers. And my role in school had started to evolve into helping parents and teachers. And so I was thinking about business ideas of how I can do that when I left formal education. And I'd been following the London Real courses and stuff like that for a while. And then when I saw the podcast course, I thought, I'm going to do that. And I think I'm going to start a podcast to do with education and well-being. So it was with the future in mind. And it was about 2.5 years ago when I first started thinking about it. And then it was been just over 1.5 years when I started the podcast.
Okay. What have been the biggest challenges for you during this whole podcast life that you've been living?
I think just believing in it, believing and sticking with it. Because the thing is with podcasting, especially when you're thinking about it in terms of business, it doesn't make money from the beginning. And it's not something you do to make money. It's something you do because of the passion, because you want to share your voice and you want to help other people share their voice and stuff like that. So I think that was an initial challenge, and also batting away the people who continually talk about money all the time. That's been a challenge as well, because for me, as I said earlier, I'm about principles and values. So I really value adding value to other people's lives. And so I don't just want to churn out content. And sometimes when you're in podcast networks or whatever, they want you to churn out content and start talking about monetization and all that kind of stuff very early on. And if you're not careful, you can get drawn into that and away from your passion or away from your bigger picture. So that was a bit of a challenge because sometimes I got distracted. And also just the sticking with it, the routine of making a podcast on a regular basis and then feeling bad when you miss an episode because of your personal life or whatever, just trying to get into the swing of things and be consistent and keep the passion going with the content. Those are challenges that I've had to overcome over the last year or so.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Carla,
Yeah.
see,
Victor, before going to the question, please, we have a comment from our top fan, Sasha.
Sasha says Pakarian is saying, what do you think about traditional education? Do you think it's too heavy for youngsters?
Not really. It can be. I think it can be, Sasha. I think that traditional education has some real qualities to it. I think traditional education is values driven quite often. It's rigorous. It's good quality. But I think what can be too heavy for youngsters is the overemphasis on outcomes rather than the process. Education in itself is of value. You don't necessarily always have to have the outcome, i.e. the certificate or the grades. The process itself is a big part of it. And you can get great outcomes, but you missed out on the qualities and the value of the process. That's why kids will do things in certain systems like cheat. They will cheat because they don't understand that the process of learning, the process of fighting, of studying, of being resilient, of getting up and sticking with something is much more important than the paper that you get at the end of it. And I think some of that comes from parents and from society. And that's the pressure. When we put pressure on them to get certain outcomes, that can be too heavy for youngsters, definitely.
Yeah, but still on that note, I think it is you, the educators, who actually bring these standards for the pupils to, like, you have to hit this standard.
Well, yeah, it's not really educators, it's the government. It's a top-down thing. So teachers are under pressure from other people above, and they are being pushed to get kids to reach those standards. And then, of course, yeah, you're right, Victor, they then put that on the parents who put it on the students. Yeah.
Matilda,
okay.
We can get
we
back
have a
to
comment from Reno Sahore. I hope I'm pronouncing your name. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. She's saying that's really awesome how you dealt with everything and thought on exploring on the best parenting style, which is nurturing for your children. Thank you, Sahora.
Hi, Renu.
Yeah. What I wanted to say before you read the last comment, before you read Sasha's comment, was flipping back to Angela's comment about how her mom like abandoned her for like 30 years before they met the first time. I have a couple of siblings whereby their mom just like left them in the family compound. Up till now, I still wonder why. And from the corner of my eyes, we are a lot, but from the corner of my eyes, I still look those women as evil. So I don't know.
Excuse me, why
That
would you say
child,
evil,
up to
Victor?
you. See,
I
that is
think
what I'm saying. That is just me.
that
As a
question,
kid, then
Matilda, I'm not even sure you need to ask that question. If you're a mum and you leave your children,
as a kid,
you've had that child for 9 months inside you. You really going to ask why they say they're evil? Come on now.
see,
Yeah, but
as
can
a,
I
as
say
a,
something
No,
as
but
well?
you
Evil.
don't know
No,
the mother's
there's
story.
no
You don't
no.
know the mother's
Matilda,
story. You don't know what happened to her. She's
Wait,
Matilda,
a
you,
human
you, you
being.
leave. No, Matilda, you leave your child. You leave your
simple.
child. Think about that. There's no
I
argument with that. So
no, but
wait a minute. If
maybe
life's not
Simon.
going good for you, you're gonna leave your child and then just go off and start your life again. Is that what you're telling us?
No, but I'm a balanced
Okay then.
human being. I'm a balanced
Exactly.
human being.
But
When a
Yeah, but
Matilda,
mother
even
is
if you're
doing that, she's not balanced, and you don't know what's going on. Maybe she's depressed. Maybe it's bad
yeah,
things
but
that
that's still
happen to her.
evil.
You're not
You
know
can
her
well, you
be
can't
story.
depressed.
be.
You can be depressed and still evil. There's
Yeah,
nothing stopping being both because you
you can't be.
do other things to people you wouldn't do to yourself. You wouldn't want to be abandoned yourself as a baby. So
See, you
why
can't
would
be.
you do it to somebody else?
I'm
See,
just saying we have to be more
No, we
understanding
see,
what's
don't. You
happening
don't.
in
You can
that
understand.
woman's life.
You can
Matilda,
understand that people
from
have problems,
see
yes, but their actions can still be classed as evil.
from my
You
Guys,
see what I mean?
experience, I see at them as evil
okay, Victor, finish your thought,
because
please.
my mom had to take two. Yeah, my mom had to take two of them in. You get, and they were living with us. They were good brothers, good sister. But how would you in they're evil to me personally? When I was growing up, I look at them. Oh, this woman. When she come, oh no, I don't want to even get close to them. So as a child, then because they were these siblings at school, they used to fall back, they lack back, they are more they slack in their education. Now, what would you advise kids as an educator? What would you advise how to parent those type of kids right now?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that, Victor, because the connection. Could you repeat that about the kids right now?
Okay,
Evil,
I say.
evil, 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 and some more evil.
Well, what I'm saying is for an abandoned child, picking up from where Angela left off, an abandoned child, 3 years old, in school, she comes to class, you kind of like notice the demeanor because they are slacking, they kind of like how would you like prop them up? What would be the
Okay, I see. I
quick
see.
ways
All
to like
right.
prop them up? Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So, before I answer that, I do want to answer on the point of evil because that's a bit strong. That's a bit strong. And I understand where you're coming from. And I did go away and just quickly check what the definition of evil was just to say it. And you know what? This is something that you wrestle with. And I'm sure Angela might want to chip in on this, that when you've had this experience with your mother or with any parent, but I think with a mother, it's very strong, especially as a girl, you do wrestle with it for a long time. And you go through periods where I went through periods of time in my childhood where I really despised my mother from a distance. And I thought she was the worst human being ever, especially when I was suffering, because I just couldn't understand why she would do that to me, why she would leave me like that. But then as I grew older, I went through different phases and I went through stages where I felt sorry for her because I started to realize that maybe there was something really wrong why she would do that. And that really came when I became a mother myself and I realized how bloody hard it is. And I realized those days where you really do want to just get up, get your shoes on and walk out the door. And any mother who says that she has not had those days, She's not telling the truth, and that's not a good quality, because it's hard work. It's hard work. It's hard work being a mother. It's hard work being pregnant. It's hard work making a commitment to stick with it. It's hard work showing up every single day. And moms get bad press when they have mistakes, much more than dads get bad press, because dad's mistakes are more distant. So they're quite often in the background. You know, my dad wasn't there. That's the big villain, you know, of a dad, is that he wasn't there enough. But moms are right there, you know, right there every single day. So they do get sometimes get bad press for the things they do wrong. But in the end, I really valued, when I had my own children, I really valued the pain that my mother went through, because I know that she did go through a lot of pain. And as I said earlier, she was an alcoholic, so she was sick. I see she had a sickness. She had something that she battled with her whole life. And she passed away when she was 52, shortly after she became a grandmother. So I went from seeing her as somebody who was really bad, who had done something to me that had made my life difficult, to really having a deep sense of love and respect for the sacrifice that she made. Even though she wasn't there, she still made a sacrifice. So, yeah. And onto the kids that struggle, Victor, that's where I became a strength. And that's why you get to the point where you don't hold it against your parents when you've been through those things, because you realize that it's made you who you are. When I see those children who are struggling, I know them instantly. I know them within minutes of them being in my classroom. I know the kids who are insecure. I know the kids who are abandoned. I know the kids who are frightened. I know kids who are being hit. I can tell when you go to hand a child a pen and they do this, you know straight away that somebody is hitting them. Or when you see kids that are bullies to other kids, and you think that they are evil or they're bad, they're quite often not. They're suffering, they're struggling, they're in pain. And those kids, I instantly take them under my wing. I was known in my school for being the teacher that would take the worst students, because I know there's a story there. And I want to know the story and help them to know the story and get over it. But I don't think I would have had that quality if I hadn't been through what I'd been through.
I have to
And
ask
you
this,
know,
Carla?
I'm gonna add something. Sorry,
with
Simon.
you.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Simon.
I want to
Matilda.
say something. You know, Carla, maybe if your mom thought, I don't know, if your mom thought she would be in your life, she would damage you more. That's why she left. You don't know what she was thinking. I don't believe that mothers don't love their children. I feel like at that moment, because of their shortcomings in life, because of their emotional whatever they're going through, they made a decision. Maybe they think it's better for their child to not be involved.
Yeah, and I think also I believe I do. I believe in God. I believe whatever people believe is different, but I believe in God, and I believe in people's lives, everything unfolding for a reason. And I don't believe that anyone has a perfect life. I've never met anyone in my 42 years that's had a perfect life. Some people struggle in childhood. Some people have blessed childhoods and then their teens are terrible or, you know, really difficult. Some people have wonderful childhood and teens, and then their adult life is awful. And some people, they have a blessed existence right until they have their own kids. And then it's like, oh boy, it's like, what's happening to me? So I think everyone has their fair share of blessings and challenges in life. And that's just what it is to be a human. And your job is to make the best of what you're given. So I just take my experience as just another one of the experiences that are out there for human beings. It's not better, not worse than anyone else's.
Yeah.
We have comments. Carla.
Go ahead, Matilda.
Yeah, so Renee is saying, in today's world, there are many parenting styles. At times, parents get confused. We'd love to find out from you, Carla, which is the best way to deal with teenagers.
Oh, I had this earlier as well on a chat on a Facebook forum. This is a common one. People ask this all the time, how to deal with teenagers. Teenagers are a mirror, I would say. One thing I learned from my girls when they were teenagers is if you got away with telling lies, being fake or anything like that up to when they became teenagers, get ready, because they're about to expose you. They will expose your values. They'll expose your hypocrisy. They'll expose all the times when you said stuff and didn't follow through on it. When you say, oh, if you do that again, this is going to happen. And then you don't do it. All of that, when they become teenagers, they're going to bring it and put it on the table for you. So the best way to deal with teenagers is to be authentic and be honest and love them and support them. if you do that, then you can keep the lines of communication open, because that's what happens with teenagers. The door closes. When they keep shutting the physical door on you, there's an internal door that they're shutting on you. So you need to try and keep that open. And the only way you can do that is by meeting them where they are, being a human being, and, you know, being honest with them, talking to them, not at them, talking to them, communicating with them, and keeping the love going in the relationship so that they know that they're supported and understood, because being a teenager is difficult. And if you dismiss how difficult it is and just keep blasting them with rules and this and that and expectations, they shut down, because it's not human. We don't do it with anyone else. And sometimes we try to do things with teenagers that we wouldn't do with anyone else. We wouldn't do it with our friends, we wouldn't do it with our partners or with our colleagues, but we want to try it with teenagers because they're in that age between when we could control them when they were children and they're not quite adults, they're in between. So we think we can get away with things like talking down to them and things like that. And they quickly let us know that that's not on. You can't do that with me. I always think that the extent of the resistance of your teenagers is an indicator of something you went wrong on before that you didn't address when they were little. Maybe an unresolved conflict or some kind of pain or suffering that they've gone through that you haven't acknowledged, either in the family or outside. Maybe they've been bullied at school or something and you're not noticing. And it's been going on for so long that it's now compounded, and now they're angry with you, or they're, you know, rebelling for some reason. So it's all about communication with teenagers and being authentic, in my experience with my girls.
I want to jump in this, Carla, because teenage years can be very difficult, especially right now with new technology and COVID and what's happening. So what do you think about parenting during this new era of technology? Do you think it becomes really hard to communicate, to really guide teenagers now?
I don't think it's any harder than it's ever been, to be honest. I don't think it's harder. My girls are in their 20s now. And my son is 10. He's just getting to that age where he's starting to spend a lot of time on the internet and explore other worlds and other groups and things like that. And my girls were hardly on the internet, because when they were 10, the internet was just kind of taking off, and I could stop them from using it. It was easy. But it was just as challenging to raise them as it is with my son now. I just think that parenting has always been difficult. It's just the challenges vary slightly, but they're always around the same thing. So it's always around the battle between your values and outside values, whether it's school values, you know, friends or friends, parents, that whole so-and-so's mom is letting them do it, so you should let me do it. That it's always been there. Now the so-and-so might be a so-and-so online rather than someone at school, but it's the same thing. I think one difference is that they have access to more people, but not people in an everyday face-to-face situation. They have more access to people online, and it can be difficult to regulate that. When I was a kid, I think, for example, or when my daughters were kids, their social circle were people that were in wherever you took them. So it was either school friends, neighborhood friends, or club friends, or church friends. That was it. There was no one else that they had access to, but now they have access to whole other groups that you may not be able to regulate. But I think it's still the parents' responsibility to control that. And however you do that is up to you, but it's still your responsibility, even online. I always say that kids of a certain age should not be online in rooms alone too much, on forums and all sorts of social networks and all that. If they're doing that, they should be doing it close to you, especially when they're like 10 to 13 and all of that. I think they should still be around their parents so that their parents could sort of look over. But a lot of parents have this issue with privacy now. I always say to my kids, you don't have no privacy till you pay your own rent. If you're in my house, I get to see what's going on. So if you're on my internet, on devices that I bought in my house, eating my food, then I'm responsible for you. So let me see what you're on and let me see your password. And I'm not shy.
Oh, Carla. I would have an issue with my mom like that.
Okay, we have
Carla,
Simon
comment.
wants to, before going to the comments, Simon wants to ask questions to Carla. Go ahead,
No,
Simon.
I think go on with the comments because oh well, right.
Okay.
Just a quick one, Carla. You did say that you had you believe your mum made a sacrifice. Now I have to ask you, how do you come to that conclusion? Because your relationship with your mum is more or less exactly with mine, but my mum's still alive. Um, how do you work out that she's made a sacrifice if she's abandoned you?
I think she suffered a great deal of pain and shame around what she did. And she chose to, I know this because I spoke to her about it when I was an adult. She chose to make the decision that was best for her children, because it wasn't just me, there was my sister as well. She chose to make the best decision for us at that time because she knew that she wouldn't be able to raise us. And she put us in a children's home herself, and my dad went and took us out because she knew she just couldn't do it. And that for me takes a lot of courage to say I can't do something. People always say they can, but there are some things in life that we all have limits and we can't do. And I think when you can put your hands up and say you can't do something, that's very courageous. And another thing that I always say about and I say this to my kids, is that my kids are not mine. They don't belong to me. I don't raise them for me. I'm given them as a gift. I'm entrusted with the role of looking after them as a mother. And my job is to prepare them for outside. And quite often parents have children and they possess them and they're shaping them, for their needs, for their wants, for their desires. And they keep them even when they're not equipped to look after them. And so I think my mum, by not doing that, she made a sacrifice, because she could have faked it. She could have kept us with her and probably, who was it who said earlier, done more damage? I think it was Matilda. And that's why I've always chosen to frame it that she made a sacrifice. But that's just me.
Some people, I hear what you're saying, and like I said, coming from someone who's got the same upbringing as you in that respect, I look at it like, and it's the same with my mum, you should have got your act together. Giving up your kids is, all right, fair enough, you can give up your kids for a period of time, but you still, if you don't get your act together, it's not really a sacrifice. It's just, you just gave up, you threw in the towel. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. I think we use narratives. I use narratives in life to help myself to process things. And that's my narrative from just knowing what I've been through. It's been difficult for me to be a mom. People always praise me and stuff like that, but they don't know how difficult it's been. And I think that that's why I have that viewpoint with my mom, because I can only imagine what she must have been going through.
Carla, it's difficult to look after another human being.
Difficult to look after yourself.
Yourself. So,
Okay, so we have
Yeah.
comments.
Yes, Matilda.
So
From Andy.
Jacob Hausa is saying, thank you for sharing, Carla. Really inspiring. Thank
Hi,
you,
Jacob.
Hausa, for joining. And my favorite, one of my favorite audience, Anders Cardell. You're always fair, and I think maybe because you live in Sweden, I don't know what it is, but you're a very fun person, an interesting person. So Anders is saying, mother that leave the child is general coming from mental issues. See, Simon?
Okay, and I will counter that with this, Matilda, seeing as you're lovey-dovey and all nice and feely. Hitler had mental issues, but he still killed a lot of people. It doesn't matter what is mental issues, you can still be evil.
Yeah.
evil,
no,
again, evil.
And that's to you, that's to you, Andrew, because it's not different. It's the same principle. Yeah, I'm
But
mental,
you
so I
don't
can
know
go and
what's
do
going
this.
on in that mother's life.
I don't get exempt because I'm a mum.
Yeah, what's going on in the
It doesn't
child's
work
life?
like that.
What is going on in the child's life?
You don't get exemptions because you're a mum or because you want to see everybody in a nice light, because that's where you're coming from. And that goes to you, Andrew, because I know we're back in Kenya, we'll be having this discussion till the cows come home. Go on, Matilda.
And Sasha Saraj Pakarian is asking, intelligence is the ability to adapt. Do you think education is a real challenge on each new generation to the next one? Oh, good one, Sasha.
Yeah, I think it has been in the past, but I think the biggest challenge for us moving forward, if we really want to start to thrive as human beings, is wisdom. It's not knowledge or education. I think we've gone beyond that. I think we've got to the point where we think we're too smart for our own good. Humanity has. But there are a lot of things missing. So I think the challenge for the next generation is how to really take the stuff that we've learned and turn it into something of value, how to make more wise people. rather than more intelligent people, because intelligence in itself can be destructive, actually, not beneficial. Sasha.
We have one comment, Vangira Doyodu. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing again. Thanks, Rostan, for contributing much to the youth, even in Kenya, especially the gene that helped them to connect on their level. Collins, okay. Well, I guess Renan
Sorry,
is
Matilda, I have to respond to that. It's okay. Thanks a lot. Nice. She's talking about my gym. She's one of the
He's
customers
one
I
of
had in the
Simon's
gym in Kenya.
supporters.
Well,
Oh,
I helped
hello.
a lot. I helped
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
orphans when
Now
I
we
was
can
in
see
Kenya.
from Anders is saying, yeah, your actions evil again, evil again, evil again.
Anders, I thought it's your my side. What happened? I just told you you're one of my favorite commenters.
But
Hello.
Anders, I have to respond to. I'm not Matilda. If you get these comments up quickly, then I can respond to Andrew. Anders, what you're saying here is right. It's not a justification, and this is what I'm saying to Matilda. In this case, just because you say you're mentally ill doesn't mean you can't be evil, and it doesn't justify your actions. Your actions, if they're evil, they're evil, and that's all I'm saying. It's sad. It's not something I relish in. But anyway, I hope your son's all right, Andrew.
And Andrew, it's
This is
remember
continuing.
time when people that are suffering generally become self-centered and do evil actions. And then he's saying it's not a justification. And then we come back with Sasha later on. Go ahead, Carla.
Okay, yeah, you can read Sasha's comment.
Carla, you're a really interesting human being. I will definitely take your taxi podcast one day.
She's going to be your competitor, Simon. Carla's taxi.
Yeah,
I see what
so
he's
I
saying.
should start my own taxi podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that idea, Sasha.
Yeah, but Carla, you'd have to get a car first. Yeah.
Don't be rude. Oh dear.
Okay, so Nelson, do you have a question to Carla? You were eager to ask a question. Go ahead.
So, Carla, I wanted to ask, how did you make that switch to become an expat? How did you? I mean, that's a big, big jump.
Yeah, it is. I think I just wanted to be outside of the UK. There was just something in me that just said, you know what, I want to be somewhere else.
I got to get off this little island. Was that it? I mean, what?
Yeah, I just wanted another experience. You know what? I think part of it, Nelson, was being a foreigner. And I know I was born in Britain, but when you're a first generation of expats called immigrants, my dad was Jamaican, so he came to the UK.
Or rather, the other way around, immigrants.
Yeah.
Actually, he's not even an immigrant. He's from Jamaica, right?
Yeah.
So he's part of that whole Commonwealth.
Yeah. So my dad came to the UK, and he always felt as an outsider. And I think that he transferred that to us as well, because I said earlier on that my dad was alone, so we didn't have the other side of the family. I didn't have my Scottish side of the family in my life. So I never really had a strong sense of feeling like I belonged in the UK. And for a long time, I just felt like I didn't fit in here, and that my kids didn't fit in here, and that maybe there's somewhere else that I do fit in. Maybe there's something else out there that I need to see, another country outside of the Western world, or outside of the white world, can I say? That's a bit controversial, but that's how I felt. And I felt like I just needed to see something else. And I just had this really strong pull to leave. So I did. And I'd never heard of Qatar, the country where I taught. I'd never heard of there until 2 weeks or so before I left. I got offered the job there. I was just sending my CV everywhere and see what happens. And it happened to be Qatar. So off I went. A little adventure. I think I felt like I was, when I was a teenager, I remember when I was studying, I wanted to do a backpacking, or I wanted to do, it was all the rage when I was growing up. Kids used to go backpacking, or they used to do student exchange. And although university didn't appeal to me, student exchange did. But I could never do anything like that because I had my kids, and I felt like I'd missed out on travel. So I think once the opportunity came, I thought, well, why not do it with kids? Why do you need to be young and single to travel? Do it with your kids. Stick them on the plane as well. And so I did. I didn't feel like I had anything to lose. I felt like it was going to be a great education and for me and for them. So I just went and did it.
I mean, that's amazing, to just kind of carefree, and I don't know if that's the right word, carefree, but to take that leap, that gigantic leap of faith.
Yeah, that's interesting. Speaking about leaps, you've been doing so much leaps in your life, and you've been quite successful doing most of the leaps. And there's no success without failure, anyways. But your leaps have been really, really huge. Now, given that you've been settled, you are high skilled, high income educator for a very long time, and you had to pivot and just move into entrepreneurship. Why? What was going through your mind then? Why would you want to start teaching educators now? Why?
Just felt like a natural transition. I felt like I'd outgrown the classroom, and was having a lot of discussions with a colleague. I can see her. She's posted a comment here. Hi, Farha. I see you. I was having a lot of conversation with this colleague of mine, and I was just really frustrated for a long time. I felt like I wasn't. I was loving being with the students, but I wasn't loving the bureaucracy and all the nonsense in the education system. And I was really struggling about where I was going to go for a long time, what I was going to do, and whether or not I should completely leave the education system and go and do something else, because I have other passions like art. I'm an artist as well, and I wanted to be an artist at one point, and then I wanted to do psychology, and then I wanted to write books. And this colleague of mine who's here, Farhad, today, she went through all these conversations with me, and she helped me to understand that I am a natural educator and that that's what I was born to do. But I just needed to find a place where I can do that and continue to contribute based on my background. So all the things that I know about my own childhood and my teens and all of that, I can still be using that to help people, but outside of the class. So why not focus on parents and teachers? And that was starting to come into my job as well. I was being asked to do a lot of stuff to do with teaching teachers and helping parents as part of my role. And so it just naturally went in that direction. I started getting asked to do teacher training, design courses as part of my job on top of being a teacher. And once I got into that, I realized that I really like designing course content. I could spend 8 hours a day designing course content and not even notice that it's gone dark outside. So I just started doing it more and more. And I said, okay, I'm going to leave and do this. I'm going to do this and make stuff for teachers and offer mentoring, because that's also easy for me. I could talk, as you can see, till the cows come home about education. So why not do it and get paid? So that's what I thought.
Yeah. So which leads to my second question, because many people from my community and my podcast guests, I speak about entrepreneurship from the African and Caribbean community, and most of them are high-skilled individuals, high-skilled people like yourself. What was the first, what demon do you have to overcome, like mentally or emotionally, or the self-talk? What was the first one, and how did you overcome that? And I'll rest my case.
That I'm not good enough, or that I've not been successful enough. For a long time, I was doing that. I was comparing myself to people who had had two parents and happy childhoods. And I was doing it for years and years before I noticed. And it was, again, when I was having conversations with colleagues and I was saying, why do we compare students? Why do we compare a student at the beginning of the year who started the year without being able to read the alphabet, but at the end of the year was able to read 10 sentences? Why do we compare him to a student who started the beginning of the year reading a whole page and is still reading a whole page at the end of the year, has actually made no progress? But because he's a good reader, we celebrate him, but we don't celebrate the kid who's come 10 steps. And the more I was saying that, the more I was pointing the finger at myself and saying, why do I compare myself to people who had a huge family, lots of family support, a loving childhood, grew up in a nice neighborhood, to me? Why am I looking at them and saying, well, I should have what they've got and I should be where they are? I should have had as many promotions, or I should be owning as many properties and have the financial situation that they have, instead of looking at where I've come from And that was a big challenge for me. I had to start telling myself that I'm good enough. But also realizing that I'm not a teenage mother anymore. I'm not a young teenager struggling to raise kids. That was in my head for a long time. I used that to define who I was. And I had to overcome that. And I think I only just got over that in the last few years since my girls grew up. Now that I see them and they have their own jobs and they're doing their own thing, I'm like, well, can't use that as an excuse anymore, can I? You know, so yeah.
We have a couple of comments. So Anders Cardell is saying, I mean, it was talking about, is referring to his previous conversation about the mothers leaving their children, saying it's not a justification, just a fact. And it's saying, I mean, in a sense, where it's beyond that individual's ability. I agree. And then,
Okay. There is a problem with connection with Matilda. So I will try to show Anders Cardell comment. What Matilda is trying to say is, Anders Cardell said, one other thing is that it's important to reach a point where you replace anger with acceptance. Not for the parent that has...
Carla, I'll take over on the comments for you to make it easier if you
I
want.
came back, sorry.
Okay.
My internet got...
Right. So Anders is saying one other thing is that it's important to reach a point where you replace anger with acceptance. Very true, Andrew. I totally agree with that. And not for the parent that has betrayed you, for your own sake, like Carla has done. Yes, I agree with that totally. It takes time, but you can get there eventually. Faha, excuse me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Carla, you're an inspiration. Much loved. God bless. And then there's another message with lots of love hearts. Then we're back to Anders here. And Anders is saying, excuse me, there's a bit of delay on this one here. Everything's going slow.
If you got peace of mind,
read the comment, please.
If you got peace of mind, you got everything. Yeah, Anders. Very good. And then he's saying many people that have been abused become high achievers in work or other areas as a compensation for feeling bad or less than others because they were betrayed and left alone. True.
Yeah.
We're done with the comments for now.
Okay, great. So I think we had questions that we are going to wrap up our conversation. Nelson, you want to ask a question for Carla?
Carla, you've gone through a lot, been through a lot, and I think still we've only just kind of hit the top of the surface, the tip of the surface, okay? You got some more questions for part 2 of this, Carla 2.0. But in the meantime, Carla, what is your secret sauce? What has been your secret sauce?
I would say spirituality. I'm a very spiritual person. I say I believe in God. I really do believe in God because I don't know. Sometimes I really don't know, Nelson, how I made it through. But also, I think I'm just a loving person. Love is what I do. I love, and when something bad happens, I go through the anger, like Anders said, but it's shorter than maybe some other people, and then I'll just come back with a loving response. And it's become habitual since I was a kid. I think you are what you are. So I try and flip things into positive, and I try and think of the loving response. What would be the loving thing to do? Kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Not the British stiff upper lip.
I have that as well. That helps me, especially when I'm teaching or in a classroom or dealing with difficult people. I have that, but I'm just a loving person more than that. And even if I am being stiff upper lip, it's because I really care about you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Carl.
Right. There's another question also from Simon, I guess, about what would you tell to the 16 years old you?
Oh, oh dear. You are good enough. That's it.
Great and simple answer. There's another question too. I think it's from Nelson or Simon. A conclusion question. What's the impact you want to have on the world? Yeah.
Oh, what's the impact I want to have on the world? To show people that it doesn't matter where you come from, what background you come from, or what's happened to you. That doesn't define who you are. What you do defines who you are. And that's your choice. Your background is never your choice. You don't get to choose that, but you get to choose how you respond.
Yes, and that's very powerful because your background does not define you. It's your skills and how you overcame challenges that defines you most. Matilda, you have question for Carla?
Yes, I have a very interesting, since you're a teacher and you've been a mother of three, I have this question to think, when you meet people the first time in your classroom, like these young kids, do you think you understand their character? Is that character still the same throughout when they're older as well, like the essence of their character?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love that, Matilda. Yes, I do. And I learned that from my own children. My children are still the same now as they were when they were babies. My daughter's 24. She acts exactly as she did. Her character is the same as she was when she was 1. And yeah, they are, the students are. And I think if you can read character, if you can vibe off people and use your intuition, I think I have a strong intuition for kids, particularly. And I think that comes from me suffering in silence. I was very quiet as a child and I suffered in silence. A lot of stuff people didn't know. My dad used to say I was like deep waters. So the surface was very different from what was going on inside. So yeah, I do. I definitely read the kids, and I strive to bond with them. One of my colleagues in my job used to say, "Here she is with her ducklings." Because I'd walk along the corridor and all the boys would follow me like little ducklings. And it's because I just had this little bond with them. And that's because I read them and I care about every single one of them. I make sure that I do that, and I see them. I make sure they know that I see them.
So the possibility of change is not there that much. I'm thinking about if I can change Sasha in certain way. I guess I missed the bus. That was the question.
Yeah, you can grow, you can learn. Yeah, you can grow and learn, but it depends on your environment.
No, you can't change a grown man. Sorry.
No, but he can change himself. He can change himself.
You know what? I
You can't
sorry to jump in there.
Change yourself.
Victor, sorry to jump in there. I've got some brothers, and let's say they're very wayward, and women have changed them. They've calmed down a lot. So you can, but it's a question if you're the right person to do it.
You could provide an environment that supports them changing themselves. Can I be diplomatic?
Simon, maybe your brother just became cannier. Maybe they just became cannier. Who knows?
I don't think so, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, Carla, before we go, I just need to throw it in there. I'm really particular about what you've actually created. Can you tell us about your course? And can you just give us what you're into now?
Yeah, so I've created a course for educators, and I'm in the process of developing one for parents as well. The one for educators is called Fundamentals of Wellbeing for Educators, and it's practical strategies to get themselves back on track. Because one of the things I learned with my job when I was working with teachers over the 8 years was that they really struggle with their own well-being, and that has massive implications for student outcomes. When we're saying about attaching to your students and bonding with them and seeing them and all of that, it sounds all very nice, but I know that I have to go through a lot to do that. And sometimes I had to sacrifice the standards and the grades in order to care about the students. But I was allowed to do that because my role in education was pastoral care. It was for supporting students specifically who have additional needs. And so their learning wasn't the priority, they were the priority. Whereas for a lot of other teachers who are in the classroom who don't work in that kind of role, they're more traditional, they have to overcome all of that and get these students to get outcomes. And it's really difficult, and it impacts them. And they don't know how to get themselves to a place where they can keep getting the results, but also take care of themselves. So I designed a course that helps them to be able to do that. And it goes down to values. It's all about them having a look at values and making sure that they're values-driven educators rather than grades-driven or social status driven, which is quite often some of the reasons why teachers get burned out and stressed out in the job and their well-being suffers because they focus on the wrong things.
Yeah, that's cool. Where can we get this? Where can we find you?
So you can find, Howler's going to post all the links, but you can find my course, just Google Wonder and Wellbeing. You can also reach out to me personally. I like people to reach out to me personally. Send me an email at wonderandwellbeingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can sign up to the mailing list and reach out to me and I'll get back to you and give you the details about where you can find the course. And look below and you'll see the links to the course. The course is free for the month of July for educators because they finish in school and they want to do some things to develop themselves. So for the month of July, it is free for educators, but it won't be after the end of July. So I'll be posting it around as well. I'll be sending it out there on social media so that they can get hold of it.
And also, guys, in the description of this episode, we have the landing page for Carla. So you can continue to see her latest courses and session. And you can also book a call and session with Carla to see if she can help you as an educator or as a parent. She is high skilled and a professional educator. So Matilda, please, can you read the last comments?
Yes, Farah Khanum, I think you are one of many of her admirers. We admire her a lot in our team. She's saying, Carla is original, genuine, and very patient. Quality very rare to find in one person. I agree, and I'm sure our team agree with that. She's a beautiful human being. And then qualities, yes. And then we have Matthew Omogai, yes. Very sorry for my mispronunciation. Great response. Your background don't define you. Yes, your background don't define you.
Yes, Matthew Omogiate.
Omogiati. Where is she from?
Oh, okay, it's from London here.
Oh, very nice. Anders is back saying people that has been abandoned has a high risk of falling, grooming, sexually abused, and so on. A natural consequence is a need and thirst of being loved, feeling important, or other type of confirmation. Well, he's saying he's generalizing it. And then he's saying, I'm happy to hear that Carla said about her work as a teacher. It's important that there is a people that has the ability to see young individuals beyond their sometimes bad expressions. Carla?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You're seeing the potential. And I think that's important. So although we said earlier, people don't often change when they're adults, when they're children, there's still hope. And that's why I always think there's always hope that they can learn something that can help them. And kids can make massive transformations. Kids can make massive transformations. And I did. My siblings did. People that I know, lots of people that I know went through more difficult times than I did. They did. So people can, but they need adults to have some belief in them.
Yeah. We strongly agree with you, Carla, and we are very lucky to have you as a co-host, as a friend, as a teacher in this group. Your story is very inspiring, and I think we are doing this because people want to know more about you, more about us, more about the stories we share, because the more we break barriers and we share stories, the more people will feel less lonely and they will feel relate to us. So if you guys are very interested in this kind of special episode, please subscribe on YouTube, on Facebook, and also reach out to us individually on Facebook or Instagram. We are happy to have your comments. And if you would like to know more about Carla's offering services and coaching sessions, you can reach to the landing page in the description below. So last minute, I'm just going to do a round to introduce again my co-host. Simon, let's go with you.
Hi, I'm Simon Rushton, host of Taxi Chronicles. Need to say more, really. Lots of episodes. If you're interested in listening to people's life stories, experience just like we've been sharing and Carla's been sharing, by all means, listen. You get your daily dose at 8 a.m. every British Standard Time in the morning. people sharing their personal life experiences. Over to you, Matilda.
And my podcast is Coffee with Matilda, A Journey to Self. And you can find me on iTunes, Spotify, and all podcast platforms, on YouTube and Facebook. Over to you, Victor.
Yeah, thank you, Matilda. Yeah, you can find my podcast, Diaspora Entrepreneurs Podcast, on all major platforms, and we are on YouTube as well. So go there, subscribe. Don't forget. Over to you, Nelson.
And I'm well. Before I begin, first of all, uh, Carla has her course, and just a quick correction: the course is not free. It is a complimentary course. It is a complimentary course. Okay, Carla's work is way too expensive for it to be free. She's sharing a special gift with everyone. As a matter of fact, it's so special that's why it bounces in and out. So you got to grab it because it might jump off the screen. And okay, so. Having said that, I'm Nelson Jason Brano here, investing in America, where we talk about how to invest in U.S. real estate. And we also have interviews with incredible entrepreneurs as well. Thank you. And over to you, Carla.
Yes, so Carla, I want just to get back to you at the end to have final word in your coaching and education field.
Yeah, I do want to mention actually one of the collaborators that I work with. So Beatrix was here earlier. Beatrix is somebody that I collaborate with in the coaching for education community. We're coaches from all over the world that work with schools, with education authorities and things like that to improve outcomes in education by promoting the idea of coaching for teachers and for parents so that they can overcome some of the challenges that we were talking about earlier. So when people go on my landing page, they will see information also about coaching for education, or what we call the raising awareness of coaching in education. And I collaborate with them to provide coaching for more parents, because obviously I'm just one person. So quite often, if it's something that I can't manage, then I hand it over because I'm connected to a bigger community of coaches who come from all different backgrounds. So I do mainly mentoring. And then when it comes to the coaching, I collaborate with them and find coaches from in that network to support parents. So I do want to mention that. And also, of course, people can catch the Wonder and Wellbeing podcast and be involved in all sorts of discussions and listen to conversations with all sorts of other solutions. So back to you, Howler.
Thank you, Carla, for sharing all of this. And I would like to have a special thanks for the audience. I hope that I'm not forgetting any names. Beatrix, Angela, our top fans, Sasha, Renew, Jacob, Anders, Vongira. Who's else we left? Faraha, thank you. Matthew, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching and for being there, for supporting us, for supporting Carla's journey today. And if you would like to reach out for any feedback and comments, we are open. And next Monday, we're having another discussion and another heated topic. So tune in 7 p.m. UK time on YouTube or on Facebook. So I'm the host of the podcast, Woman in the Stories podcast, and I hope you have enjoyed this live session today. And I wish you all the best of luck. Thank
And
you so much.
also 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Miami, New York time. Okay.
Yes, and for our people in Miami, please.
Miami, New York time. Okay. We look forward to having you over here. All right. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.